Well, hi. Good evening, everyone, here from the Temple of Silence. And see that sword on the wall? That's in case I misbehave. We have lots of swords around here when you share life with a first-rate soul. You hear me? I was saying there's a sword
Now
on
I can hear you.
Okay, I lost contact. But anyway, welcome to our continuing identification as being. We've really had quite a month, and I hope that a number of you have been involved in the festival week of the new group of world servers from the 21st to the 28th of December. Lots of those programs are on Makara now, not all, but they're in the process of coming there. And also, well, we had that 25-hour vigil where we welcomed every time zone into the new year, and beginning with something just a little bit to the east of the international date line, or is it west? I think it's west, and then continuing to go west until we came around to the Pacific once again, and many things to contemplate. But maybe I just want to say that one of the things which may be of interest to you is Tuya and I and some others have thought about how to add esoterically to the objectives of the United Nations and to strengthen the servers there. So we have kind of an experiment we call the Esoteric United Nations. And if you are interested in being part of that, and you're not yet, it does involve a pledge that you will, maybe for 2 to 5 minutes every day, keep a particular country in mind in terms of invoking and evoking its soul. We will have occasional webinars, maybe once a month, and in general, we will find ways to study these various nations. When Tuya was doing this for the Ask program, and she will continue, I discovered I knew so little about how people live in various parts of the world, and it was really eye-opening in terms of healthcare and literacy and environmental factors and wars being fought and all kinds of things, the religion, politics, all that. So, and I found that very enlightening. Basically, it all springs from the wonderful little book, The Destiny of the Nations. And even though 70 years ago or so, a bit more, when the Tibetan wrote this book, he did not, he could not foresee all the new nations springing up. Now there are, I think, 197 nations, and only two of them are not members of the United Nations, the Vatican being one, and I forget the other one. But the idea is, over the course of the next 7 years, leading through the Great Conclave and to the next festival week of the new group of world servers from the 21st to the 28th in 2026, we will be holding these nations in mind, learning more and more about them, and how to intelligently, when possible, using the rays and astrology and perhaps the moment of the signing of the Constitution and that kind of thing, to evoke the soul ray of the nation and bring along the development of the personality where it needs to be developed. And I do think that we will have a very expanded view of humanity in all of its diversity and its objectives when we do that. So if you think you would like to be a member of that, taking the pledge and all that, which basically says every day you will, for just a few minutes to 5 minutes, hold the nation in mind, and then of course you take your own internal silent, up to you kind of pledge, on the interior. Then just sign up in the chat box and with your email address, and they will be gathered from there, and we will send you out the details of when that Thursday, excuse me, when that Thursday webinar will occur. So there's just a very lot going on. You know how the groups across the world, quite a few of them, Russia, Israel, New York, South America, here in Europe, and so forth, and many others that I just would escape my attention. Yes, Australia, of course. They got together and they broadcast or webinared their offering, and then they appeared on each other's webinars, and so it was really an international new group of world servers festivals on many of the programs. And at least with regard to the Moria Federation, we hope to have all of these programs available for you now. Quite a few of them are already there, and I owe my colleague BL a couple of them which have not yet been sent. So I just want to, and we had a lovely group of people here, maybe 10 to 12, 13 people from all over, and they got to visit face to face and to deal with all these issues maybe in even a more immediate and ongoing manner. I'd just like to welcome tonight Anne and Parker, Annette, Antoinette, Cassandra, Catherine, Damien, Francois, and Frederick. Palestine and the Holy See. Thank you, Frederick. That's a big help. Thank you. Yeah, I knew it was in that area that the two sort of nations, in a way, were not yet members of the UN. Heike, hi, and Joe, and Lori, Lorraine, Margot, Risto, and Roz. Okay, good, you got the link. Tia and Vera and Ivenica and Veronica. And over here on the right-hand side of things, Michael, Stacy from Hawaii is helping us navigate a clear path. Well, what I'd like us to be able to do at first is just kind of take a look at this chart. Now it is, this chart, as vast as it is minuscule. The Christ himself is limited at the present time to the higher parts of the cosmic physical plane, and as an 8th degree initiate coming, both he and the Buddha will probably be able to form that figure 8, which will allow them to spend some time on the cosmic astral plane and sometime in the sea of fire in Shambhala, one of them being at the right hand of the Father, and able to negotiate both. Then comes the 9th initiation. Of course, we really, we know nothing, and we're told a few things. But there is at least a temporary refusal to engage again with the cosmic physical plane as the great journey begins on the cosmic astral, cosmic mental, depending on which of the ways of higher evolution you may be taking as a monad. And then there's one path, and maybe more, because there are two more paths now. There are now 9, but at least one path leads to the cosmic Buddhic plane. And so it's a huge expanse of time in our universe, but in a way, this whole map is the tiniest of things compared to the galaxy, and our galaxy compared to the assemblage of galaxies, and all compared with a minuscule universe, which is really an infinitesimal. So it's hard to get the idea of scale, because here we are, according to the Tibetan, we are microscopic man, microscopic. And you think of how important we consider our activities and our actions to be, as if we really are something. But of course, we're just the tiniest of negligibilities. I like that word. It indicates that something is, but it might as well not be in terms of its measurability. Actually, I have heard and must still confirm that the term Maya, one of the meanings for it, is measurable. And I think we will find, if we explore this whole higher thought realm deeply enough, that we get down to things which are just not measurable. And it turns out that the universe itself, at long last, will be a Maya and not essentially measurable. Now, we don't have to worry about the disappearance of the universe. It's been it's been operating forever, cyclically. And the minute you put a concept like forever into your consciousness, it starts doing strange things, because we more easily conceive endlessness than we do beginninglessness, something that just always was. And in a way, the only no thing which always was is something that we should not even name, but we do, and we call it the absolute and by other names. It has no cause. There's nothing other than it finally. It did not arise from anything, and it simply has been forever. Now, our usual consciousness doesn't take that in, but there are little exercises. Maybe I was wondering what exercise I might give. There's so many that can be derived from these words, which I want us to define. But just, I have a term that I call this, if I can get it. Okay, and it means universe ago, you ago. And I would like us to kind of forget for a moment that we are presently human. Of course, we're always reminded of that, and naturally we'll get back into that because we have to solve the problems of what it means really to be a human being on this tiny speck, this tiny negligibility we call Earth. And just imagine that this universe was preceded by another universe. You know, it wouldn't be identical. Each one would be distinctive because, well, you know, it's kind of hard to deal with, but both the principle of non-repeatability and repeatability are operating simultaneously. In the larger categories, a principle of repeatability is operating, one universe after another forever. And in terms of a detailed relationship and relativity, there is the principle of non-repeatability. Now, I know these are big concepts, but if we're going to stretch our abstract minds, even use it for that matter, to the point where it can do some good, we have to see things from a much more expansive point of view. And it's not going to be a waste, because even though we're in the fifth root race, and even though we're in the very concrete fifth part of the fifth root race, another subdivision is on its way. And DK calls it the sixth subrace of the fifth root race. And it's going to be the beginning of the study of intuition, but not really yet, because what leads to it is the study of the and attempted utilization of the abstract mind. Now, you know, we've had great people that have used the abstract mind, and they're oftentimes on the third ray or maybe some kind of extension of the fifth ray. Einstein was certainly one, and various mathematicians have been using that, and Immanuel Kant and various philosophers have learned how to make the bridge. We as esoteric students, we may talk about the abstract mind, but by and large, we don't really know what we're talking about, and we don't really use it very much. We say it's the lowest part of the spiritual triad, but do we have any actual experience of this kind of registration from the highest part of the mental plane and the lowest part of the triad? And then we'll be ready to truly enter the Buddhic plane. And it's interesting to know that although the Buddhic plane is called the plane of intuition, the intuition does not begin operating per se until we vibratorily reach the fourth subplane of this Buddhic plane. So, you know, look at, we're just beginning here. It wasn't so long ago that the projection which we are emerged from animal consciousness into self-consciousness, and that we call individualization. It wasn't long ago at all. For some, maybe some billions of years ago, when we talk about the previous major solar system, but for many who are earth-chain people, even moon-chain people, it wasn't long ago at all. For the earth-chain people, some maybe emerged 21 million years ago, 18 million years ago, maybe 12 million years ago, depending upon what group they're with. But that's like nothing. So if we can somehow gain the sense of scope here, we will find that it dwarfs almost all of our customary thought. Now, some people might not want that. They're perfectly happy with the normal perceptual world, but the normal perceptual world is not real. It is actual, myopic, but not really real. And that's interesting about what we really do call real. Finally, the ultimate real is, you guessed it, the one and only absolute. So let's just have a little reflection. And just kind of use your creative imagination or even some people who do it with their eyes open. There's a lot of different perceptions there and sub-perceptions. A lot of distinctions between this and that. Many objects which finally exist because of the reality, the existence of self-perception itself. If on a large scale, the universal God, universal Logos, could not self-perceive in ever attenuating scope, ever reducing scope, then none of these differences, which we so readily perceive, would exist at all in consciousness. And there's an old, in philosophy, people represent different schools, and these schools are often at war with each other and seem like opposite ends of huge spectrums. But the kind of thing we're talking about is ideaism rather than idealism. Ideaism. And one of the mantrams associated with it, and just dwell on this mantram, to be is to be perceived. To be is to be perceived. The things that are the contents of consciousness in our consciousness, all these many, many things, are actually perceptions, and that's why they seem to have an existence of their own. And finally, we learn that because duality is essentially an illusion, that all perceptions are really self-perceptions. To be is to be perceived, and all things are perceptions, and all perceptions are really self-perceptions. There are many, of course, unanswered mysteries in that formulation. The famous physicist and general scientist Sir James Jeans, it's a British man, he says, the farther we go, the entire universe seems to look like a gigantic thought form. It is a self-perception. Now we've forgotten how to do that, and as we ascend, reascend the emanative stream, we're going to remember what we did, and we've been doing it forever. We have been, we've been creating, or maybe the word create is not too good. We've been self-objectifying the many out of the one, and always returning that self-objectified, self-perceived many back to the one. So either look around you or imagine some things around you and feel, or try to imagine or feel, what I would call a pervasion coming in, underlying everything you imagine or perceive. And this pervasion goes through and through everything and unites it into purity of essence, purity of being. Another mantra that I use is not what you are, it's that you are at all. So somehow this unnameable something is pervading everything, and its sameness, its, if I can call it, intervalless homogeneity is dominating all apparent distinction. That can be practiced for a few minutes every day. The great heresy of separateness is not just about feeling separate from people and having bad human relations and all that. It has to do with perceiving difference as if it were real. I don't know what verb to use, but if you could dissolve all the differences running around your consciousness into this pervading, intervalless, homogeneity or sameness, then a major, maybe the major illusion would be overcome. So here's another little mantra, and I think it makes this point. Don't get taken in by difference. The difference is functional in the myopic world. Okay. And we have to live in that world of relativity. But don't get taken in and life after life be imprisoned by the perception of difference. It's the most natural thing to be confused by manyness and be unable to dissolve the manyness into that which pervades it. But something happens in the heart center or somewhere along that line. Maybe not until we are the full monad at the sixth initiation can we really know what we're talking about. And on from there it must go. But we do want to make all things one. And they are already It's just our illusion that prevents us from seeing the pervasion. So forget quality sometimes, which you're never allowed to do when you're handling illusion, but forget it sometimes. Old, young, good, bad, right, wrong, the pervasion, the being, cuts right through all that. And then I think a new quality of the heart center, maybe its synthesis, will be an ongoing accompaniment of your consciousness. Otherwise, for however many lives, you and I will be lost in multiplicity. So I can only say that according to your earnestness and your sense of wanting to destroy illusion in your life, which can't really even be done until the ninth initiation, and even then the whole universe is illusion. According to that degree of earnestness, so will be your practice. And so will be, this time around, your success. Oh, oh, oh. I wish I could do an Om a bit longer, but this ongoing cough situation is not allowing that to happen. And for a person who used to teach singing for years, that's a bit of a crash. But you know what I mean with the Oms. Now, are there any questions or statements you'd like to make? I've got some. Oh, okay, Cassandra. Yeah, okay, so Michael or BL, no, it's just Tuya there. Tuya, can you take note that Cassandra Kurtz, Koerts, would like to, or maybe
I have both Cassandra and Hayaki that I will put on the constant contact list.
Okay. Yeah, and I want them on the pledge list also. Michael, if that's possible. And Heike, yes, they would like to, they would like to do that. So we just want to make sure we don't miss anybody, because the important thing here, I know is sort of switching to a practical subject here, but the important thing is that each participant have the chance to speak this short pledge before the sisters and brothers who are doing the same. So that's why we want to get everybody together either this Thursday, or if we miss some people out, we'll do our best to round them up. It's important because it's a long time, and every day, you may say, well, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's not a lot of time, but days have ways of eating up that time that we dedicate to these internal matters. So it will take a little doing. So I just want to make sure we have everybody down. We have from Roz, let's see now, I'm not sure, is this Joe Waltz? It says J-O, but I'm not.
No, that is not Joe Waltz.
Okay, so yes, it's somebody who wrote me recently, and it was a little while ago. I've forgotten the name, but maybe you can find the email, which would be great, if you could. Now, Roz is asking, but also vital parts of the whole, if so small, even if so small, well, they will be annihilated, Roz. There's nothing, however big, however small, that does not exist in absolute infinity, but also there's nothing that will remain in universe, because the universe itself is annihilated. And all of these perceptions that I might call in-universe perceptions are already forever a part of absolute infinitude, which is a non-universal state. And I'm going to try to get into that a little bit with the definitions. How can one practice seeing the one in multiplicity? I think the Heart Center, I remember back in the arcane school days when I was very much involved, Alice Bailey was friends with Helena Roerich for a time, and we had some Agni Yoga lesson sets. And, because Alice was very inclusive and all that. And the first one was called The Doctrine of the Eye. And it involved duality, not the single eye, but the eye which sees from here to there and divides. Then after that, we studied something deeper regarding synthesis. We called it the doctrine of the heart, and maybe of the third eye, the blue eye, the eye of Shiva, which is unitary and leads up through various unitary organs all the way to the monad. So it's not so much what you see. Do not concentrate on what you see. As a matter of fact, imaginatively negate the boundaries between the things you see, and instead feel arising in your heart a sameness. Whoops. Test, test, test. I hope.
Your picture is frozen, but we still hear your voice.
You hear the voice. Okay. And is the picture still frozen? Because I can see myself moving. But anyway, this non-formal, homogeneous reality arising in the heart, maybe it's the lower levels of Buddhi, and going out to anything, seizing anything, and negating. Okay, this is, now it says my audio is restored. So I'll just say it again, this sameness arising in the heart, and you can't really say it has any boundaries, or you can't say you see it. It's just more registered. And it takes over, it sweeps over, it engulfs, it obliterates distinctions. It obliterates distinctions. And then you don't concentrate on differences. It's as simple as that. If I want, I'm in the Temple of Silence now. I could see in front of me 200 objects. And if I wanted to be more meticulous, more. But I don't concentrate on the objects and on their distinctions from one another, which are perceptual, illusory, myopic distinctions. Instead, I allow this welling up in the heart center of something, which I don't want to define too much. I call it being, pervasion. I call the act infuception. But what it does is it unites everything, that's all, and obliterates the differences, even though my eyes still tell me of the differences, and maybe my ears would too, and so forth. Nevertheless, underneath that whole thing is the victorious sameness, which doesn't allow difference to present itself to us as if it were reality. The victorious, I don't know what's going on here. Can you still hear me, Michael? Can you still hear me?
Yes, we still hear you.
Okay, because I'm getting all of these pop-ups that are saying your audio is dead. We don't like what you're talking about, or whatever. So, victorious, sameness, engulfing, overwhelming, obliterating the apparent reality of multiplicity. Now, don't get me wrong, our life forever is dealing with Maya. As Shankara, the great sage, said, most mysterious is Maya and forever. Okay. But at the same time, the Vedantic, thou art that, is running as a subtone or supertone beneath the registration or on top of the registration of difference. Now, some of you know how Indian music looks. You know how Sanskrit looks, and there's a bar the bar is the same. It just keeps going. And out of the bar come these different letters. The bar stays the same. The letters are different. So we're looking for the pedal tone of life, the pedal tone of life. And that's what rises in your heart. It's that, I don't know if we are going to put it in terms of sound, probably not, but I like to think of it as the pedal tone of all that I perceive. And we just have to get used to feeling it. We have to know what precipitates it, what brings it on, what chases it away. It's there, always, the most important thing. And you can, a master is a very practical being. Does he not have the pedal tone? Of course he does. Can he deal with Maya and its differences? Of course he can. So both at the same time, Roz, I would say. So it's Judy Osterberg. Very good. Okay. Thank you, Judy. We'll get you on this. So I hope, Roz, that I've given you and all of us a few clues regarding at least how I go about this. I just know that if I was only operating through my head, I couldn't do it. I have to anchor it in the heart center. Then maybe my heart center will rise to the heart within the head without abandoning the heart center. And maybe that will rise finally into the egoic lotus without abandoning the heart and the head and the heart center. And maybe finally that will rise into monadic self-awareness, monadic perception, which is also a 12, interestingly. But, you're home then, and the highest idea is yours. That doesn't mean you don't improve, but at least you're in the flow. And you don't abandon the egoic lotus, 12-fold, the heart within the head, 12-fold, the heart center, 12-fold. You do not abandon these. Very subtle. And look, you don't have to spend forever on this kind of thing. But a little bit every day will fill difference with pervasive sameness. A little bit each day will fill difference with pervasive sameness. And then when that happens, you'll know that even though everything seems different from everything else, it is not. Everything is the same as everything else. And you'll be able then to contain the poles of Maya and of reality. Now, if that's of interest to you and you want to work in a subtle manner, then that's what these webinars are all about. Now, what I did last time, and we're not going to take too long here. I began the process of definition. And we worked quite a bit on the idea of identification. And we're not going to necessarily exhaust an analysis of these terms. We'll, get started in a way. And of course, in the book, Seeds of the Infinite, and in the Excel files, which I'm kind of writing the book in Excel, I go into it still more deeply. It just depends on how much you want the reality you are. Now, some people think there's only the universe, one, that's it. Maybe that universe has lasted forever. And they call it kind of the, steady state theory, that the different stars and galaxies keep on appearing and disappearing, God knows into what. And basically, the cyclicity of the universe is not much treated, and is not even treated or considered a reality. Now, the minute we get into the stanzas of Xian, which we can anticipate come from the deepest source of shambolic wisdom, and that shambolic library coming from some kind of solar library where the books don't burn up, and on until the most profound wisdom possible in our universe. So the stanzas of Xian present as the second fundamental of the ageless wisdom that there is a law called the law of periodicity, to which everything is subject. It's said in different ways by Blavatsky and by the Tibetan. There is a boundless, immutable principle. Right there, we're stuck forever. And at the same time, the great contradiction, there is a law of periodicity. The law of periodicity demands that the great breath breathe. There is an inhalation and a retention, an exhalation, a retention. That's just always been going and will go forever. So is there only one universe? It depends on what we think a universe is. Then I'm just going to try to offer a thought or two from the ideaism of this philosophy. I used to call it infinitistic or infinitism. No words are sufficient. So I will say that a universe is a state of limited, i.e. finite, self-perception on the part of the absolute deity. I'm not talking about the absolute now. I'm talking about an actor, the deity, who can split itself into illusory duality and self-perceive. It has some kind of mysterious ability for boundless self-perception. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about limited self-perception, which creates a limited, finite universe cyclically forever. Now let's think about that. In other words, the universe, any universe, is a cyclic self-perception of the only deity which can perceive absolute infinity. Now, there's no such thing as a universe that's absolutely infinite. If people think about it deeply enough, they'll realize that it would negate the law of periodicity. And we don't want to do that. We want to take those fundamentals, the first three fundamentals anyway, of the secret doctrine, and we want to hold them in special regard as having come from the deepest sources of wisdom. And so, that self-perception of the absolute deity, not the absolute deity, which is a finite self-perception, is itself a universe. And of course, the being behind it is really the absolute deity, only in a much more limited mode. I mean, are we going to say that every universal logos is a different being? I don't think we'll be successful at saying that. I think it's always the same being, an extension of the absolute deity. And I want to ask a question. Now, this is all abstract mind, friends, so, if it seems like quite a ride, maybe it is. What does the term supra-universal mean? What does it imply? How is it achieved? As you see, I'm kind of jumping around here. I have 11 or 12 things that won't all take the same amount of time to explore. I might add a few or subtract. What is the supra-universal state, and how does it come about? Does anybody have any ideas from your own perspective? And either written or spoken. Of course, I have my own perspective, but what is yours? Is there such a thing, or are you the kind of person that believes in one ongoing universe? I have a friend like that. He's deeply committed to the steady state theory. One universe with emerging and disappearing entities. Of course, I ask him, from what does it emerge? And to what does it return? And there are really, no answers to those questions given the idea of the steady state universe. So is there anybody that would like to look at that term supra-universal? I don't know, have you ever thought of it before? Or, does it enter your universe of thought? I was, driven, little I, to explore supra-universality. And why? Because of the law of periodicity. I'm afraid that music on the webinar doesn't come off very well. You need something much wider bandwidth. So anyway, supra-universality is not something we think about. But Blavatsky gives a hint. Something like the eternal parent wrapped in her ever-invisible robes had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. And then you get into all the contradictions, how obviously time is and yet it is not. And, Francis has been dealing with that in his Secret Doctrine series and doing really well with it. And some of you may be part of that webinaring that's going on. We have webinars, all the way from the highly abstract to the very, very practical. So those of you who want to know more about esoteric astrology and so forth can do that too with BL and with Eva Smith. We try to cover the range. But has it come to your mind? What is supra-universality? And who are you, if you are, during supra-universality? And, and then how long does a timeless state last? You see, it begins to boggle the mind. And what really are 7 eternities? And how can you measure that? Because all measurement is Maya. So even the great breath is Maya when compared to absoluteness, which never varies. It's the ultimate, ultimate, ultimate. Is there anybody that wants to say anything about that? Or write anything? And here's Damien. And, why can I?
I am.
We
I am like.
We made it. Okay, go ahead, Damien.
I am like. I was just thinking the last week or so about identification and what it means to me, and that struck me when I said me in my head. So what I tend to do, and this might sound arrogant, but when you dissect it, it's like the effects, and it can be so complicated, and your mind can do somersaults and backflips. But what I try to do is, and this might sound arrogant, I try to be it, whatever that is. I don't think about it. I don't analyze it. And that's one of the ways that I try to go about getting my head around it, by taking my head out of it.
I do understand what you're saying, and that's why I try so much to emphasize the chain of hearts
Yeah.
that are involved in this. Of course, here's the funny thing. If you want to deal with Maya, well, let's just say, you want to be a surgeon, you go to school for quite a number of years, and you're deeply within the depths of Maya, and it's necessary. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. But what I'm saying, when I'm going through the process myself, I mean, I actually keep away from that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like I'm dragged back into Maya.
Sure, absolutely. And that's why I say.
But I do, I do take your point. I mean, as I said to you before, I mean, your webinar, what you're doing is, in my opinion, it's needed. I mean, this has to be brought into the consciousness. People have to start thinking about it, especially because of the time that we're in as well. But for me personally, anytime I start getting into that, it kind of drags me back.
No, I understand. Multiplicity drags us back from the one which we are. And so really the art of identification is fundamental. And of course, maybe the time comes and the ability comes to faultlessly identify while dealing with evident multiplicity. And I would imagine that to be quite an elevated state.
Yeah. But even this thing, when you say identification, right? I kind of resonate, and I say, well, if you're be it, you're not identification, because you're already there. You can't identify with.
Right.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, because actually it would require a duality for that to happen. Now there is a perceptual duality, and actually sorry about that.
No.
DK says, he tries to explain his way around it, says, and it doesn't mean that this identifies with that, He is somewhere in the rays and initiations. He lays down the common traps of thought into which people fall while leaving the whole thing unanswered. So I really do understand that anything that starts with a dualistic premise is myopic, and even if you're already there, it makes it seem as if you're not. But of course, we do have that ongoing seeming as if we're not. I mean, we're not Christ. Well, we are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're not the logos, the solar logos, and we're not the universal, and yet we are. So, we have a limited, confined, self-constrained consciousness, which is part of the ball game. And we can't
because even when go
ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, even when I actually kind of think of like to be it, my personality, my little ego gets in the way. Say that's arrogance. Do you know what I'm saying? So all this comes in, and that's what I'm saying. But when you can kind of get yourself out of that,
yeah, that's it. And it's in a way, it's a formless approach.
Absolutely.
The minute we start bounding ourselves, binding ourselves, there's no way to be it. It's got to sneak up from within in an indefinable way, and the next thing you know, the multiplicity you've been dealing with may still be there, but it's less real than what
I hear what you're saying.
has come up. And
and even stretching these webinars, like, you know, it does actually helps expand, helps stretch, and different concepts, different ways of looking at things. But and that's really important. But what I'm saying, when you're actually, for me, when I'm attempting it, all that goes by the wayside. You know, it's just pushed to one side. That's not to negate how important this stuff is.
No, I see. Here's the thing.
But the actual practice of it is you have to leave all that behind. For me personally.
Yeah, at least until one is so, you know, I mean, I don't for a minute imagine that these people of monadic and sea of fire consciousness don't carry this with them all the time. Let's just say, although Master Kudumi is said to have said in the Mahatma letters, something like our festival, our holiday is meditation, meaning even they can go deeper, you know. So, but up there in divine consciousness on the monadic plane in the sea of fire, and then who knows when you start entering higher planes, you know, I can't speculate. That's divine, and those entities are Chohans and Chohans of the 7th degree and Buddhas of the 8th degree, you know, not quite having left the cosmic physical plane. And they carry that, they are that, the are-ness of, the isness of it, and their are-ness and all that, you know, it's there all the time. Now, you know, there may be varying degrees of intensity. And they are like, at the same time, super practical. So these things don't negate each other the way they do for us, because I completely agree with you. If I get caught up in multiplicity, I'm dragged right out of this other thing. So I'm working on it, you know, working on it in a,
like the rest of us.
yeah, exactly, in an unmapped, uncharted territory.
Yeah.
I mean, the roads for every person are not written on any map. You really, like the Antikarana, you find your own road, you know, if you want to enough. And of course you will, and of course have cyclically forever. Well, it's, you know, our little peanut minds and consciousnesses at this time will give way to something we will recognize as more appropriately our own. And then we may wonder about the whole scheme of things and how it came to be and why it is, and our answers will be ever more adequate. So, all right, great, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for the approach that and how it works for you. You know, that's all we can do here, is share with each other how it's working for us. And maybe one of us gets kind of a hint from another, and it clarifies the situation. Okay, let's see if there's, I don't want to, you know, spend too long. Well, I do, but I can't really do that. Tui and I have been at the, we've been here a long time with different webinars and discussions, and you can just sit down at the computer and webinar your life away. But it's all shaping up because so amusing. The Tibetan said at a certain point, the teaching will go forth over the radio. Well, this is the radio, the modern radio. And pretty soon, telepathy is going to take, I mean, you know, he says we're already telepathic. We just kind of get in our own way and we don't realize it. So, okay. You know, and when I try to present something here on a weekly or semi-weekly basis, I don't have a charted map. I let come in what comes in and respond as seems appropriate in the moment, and realize that there is much repetition here, but there's the difference between repetition and not getting it and repetition and getting it. So I just live in the hope for myself and for others that dawning of something inarticulable occurs, and that it can be increasingly recognized, become sustained, and can enhance all the other obligations in which we find ourselves in the myopic world. Remember, Saturn carries, what is it? A scythe. Carries a scythe. And it cuts things in pieces. And Saturn is the physical permanent atom of the cosmic physical plane, which, as far as we're concerned cosmically, is the major plane of illusion. I mean, of course, the higher parts of it are way, way ahead of where we are right now. And we just have to admit that and proceed in confidence and in hope and in some kind of recognition that we've been through this forever for reasons that will be made increasingly clear to us as we reascend the stream along which we descended. So this supra-universal, and I just, I'm going to make short work of this. I'm not going to do too much. Anne here, just a thought that I would be interested in your comments on it. I've noticed a sense of pervasive sameness right after a natural disaster or tragedy. A common leveler of all occurs. It is felt, and I certainly would not dismiss that idea, and I would continue to explore it because it just gets rid of the non-essential. And when, life or death situations, the tsunami strikes, thousands die, all kinds of things like that. Many preoccupations. There was one man, he was if I tell you he's a 15567, it'll make sense to you, right? First ray soul, fifth ray personality, fifth ray mind, sixth ray astral, seventh ray physical. And DK says, look, you're subject to an unusual glamour. It's called the glamour of circumstance. I guess, all that fifth ray. And you are preoccupied with many little petty things which don't require of you really so much attention as you give them. And it blocks out things that are more important and fundamental. He was, by the way, he was a man, obviously a second ray monad, and he played the violin and studied insects, and I forget, was it something like DLR? I could look it up, but it's not worth it right this moment. He was preoccupied with the non-essential. Now along comes one of these disasters, or even it could be, something like, who knows, an unidentified UFO actually does appear and everybody sees it and beings come out of it and they communicate. It wouldn't be a disaster. It might be a terrible shock to some psyches and a confirmation to others, but it might have the same effect. Just banish the non-essential, preoccupatory, this is such a word, preoccupying little petty things. And then for a while, until the multiplicity begins nibbling at your holistic consciousness, you've got that pervasive something, sameness, whatever. And, it's really worth having. Multiplicity is like it's like a first cousin of separateness, of the great heresy of separateness. And we really, do need to find a way without voiding the myopic multiplicity, which is forever, to overcome it forever. And I guess this is our adventure. And one day before long, we'll understand something about endless possibility of the absolute infinitude and why we have to have universes at all. I can hazard some thoughts, but not now. So, okay. That's my response to your just a thought. And I would say, Roz, that Saturn-Pluto has the potential to shatter illusion. It also has the potential to crystallize the lower depths and to render them even more stubborn, more obdurate than they have been. I can assure you that the Black Lodge will not use the Saturn-Pluto opportunity the way we who are attempting to follow the right-hand path will attempt to use it. So let's use it the right way if we can. And Joe is saying here, the kaleidoscope of monkey mind is multiplicity. Yeah, and of course, Joe, there is, J-O, there is order within this multiplicity according to the archetypal design of things. Every system will have its archetype. So it's not just to me, chaos is like running into something once and never again. In order to build order and pattern, you have to have repeated encounters. And then things settle into a rhythm and start reflecting the divine archetype. But the ultimate chaotic state is just, if anything touches anything, it touches it just once. And no relationship can be built. Just a swirl of action, motion, or maybe more motion than action. and the impossibility of reflecting in the mosaic world below here what is built in the world of being on the archetypal level. So, mind will have its patterns and will function according to pattern. And remember how the hierarchy is described. The society of organized and illumined minds. Organized and illumined. Now, with Gemini and Mercury and all that, in the beginning we may flit from thing to thing, but eventually the patterns, the ray of the divine pattern, the second ray, will be revealed and an approximation will be made. The pattern of the mosaic world of parts and pieces will begin to approximate the world of divine archetypes. That's what we have to do, basically. The archetype is set, and we set it. Now we venture down into the world of ignorance and limitation, and somehow reestablish such a contact with the archetype that the mosaics, the pieces of the mosaics, they all fall into place. You've seen mosaics. Stand back and it all looks whole. Go up close, parts and pieces. That's what we're doing here. We're taking chaos and making it reflective of a divine pattern. So mind doesn't have to stay in the monkey state, Eventually, it will be organized mind, just like the hierarchy. Well, friends, I'm just going to say one or two more things because we're reaching the point, and Tuya and I have been on this now about 6 hours or 5 hours, I don't know. And we, after the festival week, the climax of which was 24, 25 hours, maybe we're a little bit unglued, and need to be put back together. So we'll work on that. But let me just say this. And I'm going to cross this one out. If we've dealt with it a little bit, I'm just going to indicate that by the line. The universe, any universe, is a self-perception of the absolute deity, which is not the absolute, and that's a whole nother issue. The minute you single anything out other than the absolute, you're in another realm, and you have left absoluteness. So, for infinitudinous times, and how can that be measured? And forever, and forever, and forever, there will come an interlude in which the absolute deity ceases perceiving only a part of itself, and in this case, a finite part. Infinite perceptions are also possible, but no universe can contain an infinitude. It can only contain the formula for an infinitude. So when this absolute deity ceases to self-perceive finitely, every universe disappears. The self-perception which made it a possibility and which extracted it or extruded it from absolute infinitude ceases. And the absolute deity goes back to a twofold type of self-perception, one of the infinite homogeneity which it is, and the other of the mind-boggling, let me tell you, absolute infinitude which it is. But the concentration on reduction, finitization, is temporarily over. Now, that's what I mean by supra-universal. It's beyond the self-perception, which is the universe, or any universe, ceases. And you are in a state where, though all manner of finitudes are members of absolute infinity, the concentration of the absolute deity is not upon finitude. It's upon its infinitude. And even that disappears into absoluteness by some strange process. Now, we are nowhere near, at this time, the supra-universal state here in cosmos. We're still very much finitized. Now, does this mean that the absolute deity ceases to perceive its infinitude? I think not. But it combines with it a self-perception of finitude, which it extrudes into a state of limited objectivity, and we call that a universe. Now, who's holding this universe in being? Why, of course, you are. And I am. But it's the you and I that are not different. It's the you and I which, if we trace our identity far enough, will restore us to our identity as the absolute deity, beyond any universal limitation. Now, these are ideas, and they can be pondered. Eventually, even the absolute deity cyclically disappears through a type of, I'll get into it, infinitesimalization, which leaves only absoluteness, only absoluteness. Now, we can sharpen our abstract mind with considerations such as these, and remember, for the next 2,000 years, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be sharpening our abstract mind and gaining a real foothold within the spiritual triad. So I hope this will be ready soon. I'm going to, naturally, what can I say? I'm going to convert it so it can be played on any recorder, any computer, without all of that extra proprietary software which prevents it from being played. And then we'll get it with BL and other parts of the team. We'll get it up on Makara. And before long, I really want to get a lot of this stuff up on YouTube as well, so people can at least have the chance to think about these matters, which I think, in the last analysis, will enhance their quality of life in any incarnation. Okay, friends, that's all I'm going to say. And if you listen to it again, it may be helpful to you or not. I just don't know. And Joe has been asking about the number 7. 7 is a great cycle, but it was so interesting. DK said, well, you're really concentrating a lot on the 7-year cycle. Please concentrate on the 10-year cycle. There's such a superimposition of cycles. 7 is fundamental, but 3 precedes it, 2 precedes the 3, and 1 precedes the 2. And on it goes. Would supra-individuality, universality, be related to the original universe? Well, and here's the thing. When you're dealing, Frederick, you're dealing with beginninglessness. So this is the Mayan boggler. There is no original universe. It's always preceded. Whatever we may name as an original universe is always preceded by yet another universe, differently constructed in detail and yet repetitive because it is a universe. Now, I'm just kind of checking what I missed. I like this mantra. I'm not sure I know what it means here. From you, Frederick, there's an interesting mantra in Latin. Igne, I guess it's fire, is it? Uago, Huago, lustrare uet, tibi numine ab omne. So maybe it may be there, but if you want to write down what that means, I would appreciate it. I never studied Latin, really. A little bit of Chinese and a little bit of Sanskrit, a little bit of Hebrew, but never Latin. Okay. So if you write that down, that'd be great. Like the infinitesimal eye of Source, perhaps each eye being a universe. Well, I certainly couldn't deny that the universal logos is like an eye. And it's funny about the words I and I, E-Y-E and I, both pronounced the same, in the same way. If you've got a thing, anything, except the no thing, that thing is an ultimate infinitesimal, smaller than any other possible thing and becoming a dissolvable ultimate negligibility. Anything other than the no thing becomes the dissolvable ultimate negligibility. So, there's a lot of thoughts that we have, and the thoughts are based on ways of thinking that we have long thought. We may have to get rid of some of those ways of thinking. Now, Einstein's favorite definition of common sense, he was much more third ray than fifth ray in a way. And he said it's the accumulation of prejudices up to the age of 17. Or did he say 18? So, we just are told certain things and we accept them, we prejudge, and then we judge everything by those prejudgments. He had a different idea about what reality was. And it certainly involves seeing the mystery of things. A lot of people would say, oh yeah, a magnet, it does this. Okay, that's an interesting magnet. But why does it do that? What does it mean? Why does an object fall? Apparently fall. It's the everyday things that we observe and just take for granted and don't explain, and the mystery lies there, at least for Einstein and others of his type. It did lie there.
Friedrich has provided an English translation of the Latin saying that he had given.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Frederick. The fire of the portal, the us to purify, the assist as much, the divinity of, is it you, Michael, Frederick? Okay.
It says the divinity of you from all.
Well, there's much to ponder there. With the fire of the portal, our teaching deals. That's the gate of initiation and the fires through which we have to pass, and we don't pass unless we purify in such a way that we become as that which is on the further side of the door of fire. And, that's what we're after here. What the divinity of each one of us really means. And of course, along the way, we discover that there is no each one of us. Only in Maya is there. And when those waves start overtaking you and you realize, I'll just put it, in a certain way, that the many are the one, then quite a different type of perception in universe eventuates. And the reference here, love and its absence in late Latin and Greek poetry. Okay. My son-in-law's father is deeply into this kind of thing. Well, we all have our paths. And the interesting thing is we have to be brave enough to tread an uncharted path. We may say, well, we descended via that path, so certainly we'll know how to return. But even the Buddha didn't know how to return. Or maybe he knew something, but he chose against his knowing. And maybe, although there's only one path of return for any monad, mistakes can be made. Friends, I'm going to come back to earth. I know it seems strange to call the great invocation coming back to earth, but let's do it. So, where you are, but not on the microphone, but where you are, out loud, let's do the great invocation together, whatever layer of meaning it has for you, and it has many layers of meaning. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, tomorrow morning, broadcasts, 6 a.m. GMT, and it'll be triangles. And Tui will be leading that in our usual YouTube link. Then, at night, 6 p.m., the first was 6 a.m., then 6 p.m. GMT, the science of triangles. And we'll dig a little deeper. We're almost done with that chapter in esoteric astrology. We'll dig a little deeper. And then the next day, Thursday, the reappearance of the Christ in the morning. And probably by the evening, and we'll see at what time, we will have this opportunity for people to go deeper into their commitment to and participation in their pledge to this approach we're calling the Esoteric United Nations. Look, it's not the Esoteric United Nations. It's the attempt to make an approach to helping the United Nations esoteric. And there may be, other ways of doing it and other people doing it in their own way. So, okay. Thank you for being here. Lots of love and many blessings from the whole team. And we appreciate your presence. We'll get this up and ready as soon as we can. Bye for now, and then tomorrow morning, for us anyway, we'll be seeing those of you who would like to do your, triangles meditation once a week in sort of in group form. Talk to you then, and bye for now.